The Carolina Hurricanes are set to have their first road game of this season tonight in San Jose, which is also the start of a 5-game road trip. And Brent Burns returned to San Jose after playing there for over a decade. Find out all you need to know about tonight's game in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Friday afternoon. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes and myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96. And as I mentioned, the Carolina Hurricanes are kicking off their 5-game road trip while the State Fair is in town here in Raleigh. And they're kicking it off in San Jose, California tonight. And this is going to be a game where, while I don't think it'll have much implications in terms of on ice stuff going forward, it is going to be a very big game for Brent Burns. This is his return game to San Jose. And while, of course, your guys are gonna, need to, get out there, do their thing and get the win. Of course, I do feel that this is going to be a a bit tougher of a game for Burns, and because obviously San Jose knows how he plays, and that is something you always need to figure into the equation whenever guys are returning to old teams, especially ones where they played there since 2011. And you do figure that in, but also the emotional side of things. This is going to be a emotional game for Brent Burns. He did mention that quote is going to be weird. You try not to think about it that much. And he went on to say, about the emotions of it. He says it's still weird going back to Minnesota and playing there. So you do have to figure all this in there. And again, he played there from 2011 to 2022. He played there for a very long time. And he alongside Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, they were San Jose hockey. They went to the Stanley Cup and back in 2016. And there's going to be a lot of emotions in play tonight for him. And that's where I say that it's not going to be all about the on ice stuff. Obviously, we want the Hurricanes to play great and come away with the win. Of course, we always want that. But this is going to be an emotional night for Burns. And, I do feel that those emotions are going to play a factor, and if he pulls a load like he did in the season opener, he played 22 minutes and 33 seconds and had led the team with shots on goal with 6 shots. So if you figure, he pulls in that kind of workload tonight as well, it's going to be a big night for him on the ice as well, because where I say they know how he plays and know what to expect from him, he knows the same thing from that team of what to expect from them. Yes, they do have 7 guys on that team right now that were not a part of the team last year. So, yes, you do figure that into the equation. But as a whole, he knows what to expect from this team and knows their habits and whatnot. You look at their goalies and, he knows what to expect there. So, that is one thing that will be working in his favor. It's something I've brought up in the past, with new guys coming in, guys leaving and going somewhere else. that is something that you always have to take into consideration as is the familiarity of the player and the old team. But, just a quick recap from last game, Marty Necas, he has already tied his 3-point games from last year, and it's the second game of the year. Yeah, he had a goal and 2 assists in last game. Seth Jarvis had a goal. Andrei Svechnikov had a goal, and Brady Shea had a goal. Paul Stastny tallied his first point as a Hurricane. Frederik Andersen went 31 for 32 with a .969 save percentage. And I this is gonna be a big test. This is something I mentioned in the previous episode with the Hurricanes. They're on this 5-game road trip to start out the season. This is the second game of the year, and they have so many new guys in place. It's gonna be a big test. It is going to be a very big test. If you remember last game, you had that rust in that first period. It wasn't a really good first period. As something that they need to avoid tonight because, you know, we've seen how they can be on that first road trip before, where sometimes they struggle in it being this early in the season rather than just like a 1 or 2 game road trip. This is a 2-week road trip, 5 games, and they do have lots of time in between. They play tonight, they don't play again until Monday. So it's going to be a big test for the Hurricanes. It's going to be really seeing how these new guys are fitting in and everyone is shaking off the rust. And yeah, San Jose, they're already 0-2-0 on the season. They lost to Nashville in both of the games overseas in the Global Series. So yeah, San Jose, they're not expected to be a very good team this year, but it's their first game in their home this year. So, like the Hurricanes, were fired up for their first home game. San Jose is going to be fired up for theirs. And those emotions are going to be running high. You figure the crowd is going to play a big factor in that. So, again, just like with the Hurricanes, that stuff needs to be factored in favor of San Jose tonight. So the Hurricanes, while again the team opposite of them may not be the best, it's the NHL and anything can happen on any given night. All time the Hurricanes are 22-22-2 versus San Jose. They won the season series last year with being 1-0-1. And this is going to be a game tonight where, again, I think it's going to be a really big test for the Hurricanes, but we do have to figure in who is going to be out on the ice for the Hurricanes tonight. And we will talk about that right after this quick break. Now, folks, the Carolina Hurricanes are in San Jose tonight. They got that big 5-game road trip coming through that's kicking off tonight. And if you're wanting to place a bet on any of those games, betonline.net is the place to do it. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your football betting info this season. So find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, golf, hockey, football, wrestling, whatever it may be. BetOnline has you covered. So head on over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, in terms of the lineup for tonight on what we can expect, as of 11:16 a.m., it has not officially been announced of the lines, the lineup, anything like that. As far as the lines and lineup, I should say, I expect it to be all the same guys that were on the opening night lineup. I will go ahead and say that I expect all those guys to still be there. It's just going to be a matter of who is suiting up and where. As far as the forward group, I really think the only one that we can maybe see a change is Jordan Martinook sitting out and Stefan Nazin slotting into his spot. That is really the only change I could see being made in terms of the forward group. As far as defensemen go, your top two pairs are going to be the same: Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce. Those are not going to change. It's really going to be a matter of that third pairing. Will we continue to see Calvin DeHaan and Jalen Chatfield, or will we see Ethan Bear and Dylan Coughlin, or a mishmash of both of those? I think that is something that we'll end up seeing later on today of what they end up deciding to go to. As far as the forwards go, I think it'll likely just be the same thing we saw opening night. I think that'll probably be it. Defenseman is the trickier one. Jalen Chatfield played really well, and I really and so did Calvin DeHaan, and I really enjoyed that pairing. But we are going to have to see that other pairing. We're going to have to see Ethan Bear and Dylan Coughlin, and or potentially a mishmash of both of those. That's something that was talked about, this offseason. We could see a Coughlin DeHaan pair or something like that. So it's going to be interesting. It's one that I really think is 50-50, honestly, because we do have to see that other pairing, and it is just so stacked right there in that third pairing for the defenseman of what they're going to do. If you remember in that intermission interview that we listened to from Don Waddell, in the previous episode, he said that the team we saw opening night very well could not be the same team that we see come back from this road trip. There could definitely be some changes made. So as far as what get what happens, I think we'll likely see the same opening night lineup, lines, all of that. I think that's what we're going to see tonight. Again, as of 11:18 this morning, nothing has been announced. So, but I think we're going to see the same thing we saw opening night. I think that's fair. I think we need to get a feel of what those guys have to offer and what that combination has to offer before we start going and changing stuff. I think come Seattle on Monday, we could potentially see a change. We could realistically really see Nazen slotting and we could see the Coughlin Bear pairing. We could see that stuff. Again, we very well could see it tonight. I'm not saying that we won't see it tonight. So, it's going to be interesting to see just what happens. And I I wouldn't be upset if we saw Nazen slot in. I wouldn't be upset if we saw the Coughlin Bear pairing slot in. But ultimately, I think we just need to get another game of that opening night lineup of what we had there before we go and start changing things. But, you know, in terms of goalies, I think Frederick Anderson, he's likely going to be the guy to get the start here. We know just how much of a workhorse he is for the team, though I do feel that going into the depths of the season, they do need to lighten the load on him a bit. So we don't have a repeat of last season where he ends up missing the 20 games in the regular season, playoffs, all of that. So I do want to see them lighten the load on him some this year, give Antti Ranta some more starts, and Pyotr Kochetkov, bring him in some more, because you figure it's probably going to happen at some point. Don't just continue to ride Freddie into the dust. Let's, lighten the load a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if we did see Antti Raanta tonight. You look at San Jose and what they did in their 2 games against Nashville. They did split it up. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did that. But ultimately, I do think Freddie Anderson is going to be a start. We're going to see the exact same line combinations, defensive pairings, and all of that we saw on opening night. I think Seattle is going to be when we see stuff start to change up some. But again, that's just my opinion. I'm sure There are going to be folks out there listening and watching that have different opinions of what the Hurricanes should and will do tonight. Again, that's just us. Brind'amour, Tim Gleason, and coaching staff, they're going to do what they feel is best for this team to come away with the win. And speaking of coming away with the win, we need to talk about the keys to the game tonight. And we will do that right after this quick break. Now, folks, it's time to talk about the keys to the game. And first and foremost, I have touched on it already today, and that is Brent Burns tonight. He needs to keep his emotions in check, and not in a bad way, like how we've seen folks, throw sticks at other players and stuff like that. That's not going to happen with Brent Burns. I don't see that happening. It's going to be a very emotional night for him, and he needs to not let his emotions get the best of him. Be on his A game. We know what he can do. Let's see it. So that's going to be big. And Brent Burns keeping his emotions in check. Jordan Stahl, went on to say, that it's going to be a. He was honest with him. It's going to be there. Those emotions are going to come back, and you're going to think about the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. Brent Burns was a part of all of it for San Jose, just like Jordan Stahl has been a part of all of it for the Hurricanes. So it's going to be an emotional night for him, and he needs to keep those emotions in check and not let them get the best of him. And that'll go for other new guys, whenever they go to their homes. You look at Paul Stastny, going back to Winnipeg, Andre Kasha. I know he was in Boston last year, but going back to Anaheim, he spent quite a bit of time there. So you look at some of these other guys of whenever they go to their homes, keep the emotions in check. But Brent Burns is going to be the big one because he spent so long there in San Jose. Another thing is the power play. They went 0 for 2 on opening night, and I said then that I will give it a little bit of time before I get too critical of it because there are so many new pieces. It's the beginning of the season, and you got to shake off that rust. These new guys got to get acclimated to each other, but I do want to see the power play look a bit better. I'm not necessarily looking for them, to go 4 for 4 on the power play or anything like that, but in the opening night power play, the two guys that stood out to me were Burns and Jarvis. I really want to see the other unit and the other guys, really stand out a bit more. And again, it's not always you're not going to succeed on every power play opportunity. I know that, but I do want to see a bit more cohesion and just steps in the right direction when it comes to the power play, really. And that's the big thing I want there. I want to see them take steps in the right direction. If they go 4 for 4 or whatever on the power play tonight, yeah, awesome, great, fantastic. But I'm really just looking for steps in the right direction there. Another thing is avoiding a slow start. And that's something that has plagued the Hurricanes in the past before of just getting out to slow starts. They only play, 40 minutes rather than the full 60. That is something that's really going to need to be nipped in the bud early this season. I was very critical of that last season. And if they can avoid that, then we'll be good. We did see that exactly in the first game of the season of having a pretty bad first period, but they were able to come back, score 4 unanswered after Columbus went up 1-0. But this is, you're not playing at home. You're not having your home crowd backing you and all that. You're going to be in San Jose's house tonight, and it's going to be their first game in front of their home crowd. So it's going to be one where I really feel that the Hurricanes need to avoid that slow start. Can they overcome it? Yeah, they absolutely can should that happen. We saw it in opening night. Heck, you go back to New Year's when they were down 4-0 and then scored 7 unanswered. They can do it. It's just you're not going to be able to do it every night. And it being this early in the season with this big of a test on this team, having that 5-game, 2-week road trip to start out the season, that's going to be rough. So you're going to want to be on your A game and do everything right. And avoiding that slow start is going to be really big. Another thing, with more individuals, I do want to see Marty Natchez continue his hot start. Not necessarily another 3-point game or anything like that, but he's got a lot of expectations on him this season. He had a down year last year. Folks are looking at him to really step up, especially with Max Pacioretty being out. I do want to see him continue to be a key piece of this offense and team in general. I want to see Andrei Svechnikov continue to take steps forward in his game. I'd like to see Sebastian Aho as well really kind of show up and take over the game like we know he can, because that's going to be key, going forward down the stretch of the season into the playoffs. He's supposed to be the guy. I want to see him start to show that stuff early. I don't want to be wondering, come, February, March, April, where is he? I want to know, like, from the get go, like, hey, he's been on a tear this year. I know come playoff time, we're going to be getting the best Sebastian Aho. I want to go ahead and start seeing that now. I also just new guys. I want to see them continue to take strides of fitting into the team. Paul Stastny recorded his first point as a Hurricane in opening night. I already mentioned how Brent Burns led the way with 6 shots and playing about 22 and a half minutes in opening night. I want to see, he really made his presence felt. I want to see that again tonight. I want to see him continue to just make his presence felt for the Hurricanes. That's what, we want from him. We want him to be a big factor out on the ice. That's why we brought him in, to be a game changer, and we know he can be. We absolutely know he can, and tonight would be a great opportunity for him to do that against his old team in San Jose, because again, like I mentioned, he knows how San Jose plays. He knows how to take advantage of the opportunities and weaknesses that the players there have, maybe more so than, a guy like Sebastian Aho. Brent Burns knows that team much better, but on the flip side, San Jose knows him better than anyone else. So we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens tonight. It is, of course, Canes After Dark. The puck drop is at 10:30. Of course, it is the first road game of the season. So make sure you have your coffee, you have your energy drinks, whatever you need, because it's going to be a late one, folks, but it'll likely be a very fun one. I do expect San Jose to have some nice stuff for Brent Burns, a nice video package, a welcome back, all that stuff. I think they're going to really do right by him, and as far as welcoming him back goes. So, folks, enjoy the game tonight. Make sure you got your coffee, because we are going to need it. So make sure you are following Locked On Hurricanes on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes, and myself on Twitter at JaredEllis_96. And will talk to you guys, in the next episode where we recap this game tonight.